Danny in Florida wants to talk to us and ask some advice. So welcome, Danny.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Hemant. How you doing today?
Hey, excellent.
Doing well, thanks.
All right. Great. Okay. I'm calling pretty much to speak with Matt. And Matt, I know you're not a psychiatrist, but I really admire your intelligence and your experience. So I'm gonna ask you, and hopefully you can help me out a little bit. What kind of transpired is I've converted or talked my girlfriend into being an atheist, and she was pretty much Christian prior to that. And what's happened is it kind of caused more harm than good.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. No, it absolutely did not. I know what you're getting ready to. I know what you're getting ready to say. She's now depressed that she's not going to get to go to heaven and see her family and stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I will have thoughts here, and I'm sure Hemant has thoughts here as well. My thoughts are really simple. It is not her conversion to atheism that caused this depression. It is the lie from Christianity that caused this depression. Mm-hmm. Christianity built up a false expectation that everything's going to be fine and rosy someday. And after we're dead, we're all going to get to spend eternity together, just blissfully running through the Elysian fields and enjoying and singing praises and everything else. It's as if someone told your girlfriend that she was going to inherit $1 billion. And today she found out that that's not the case. It is not the fault of the truth that she feels bad. It is the fault of the lie that she feels bad. And getting to recognize that, she can also come to the recognition that this is a gift, because not only does she have the truth now, as opposed to the lie, or at least at a minimum, she is not believing something without good reason, but she now gets to recognize that she has exactly one life. If there is an afterlife, it's a bonus that we don't know anything about and nobody can demonstrate. She has one life, and that means that you're more likely to treat people better the first time. It means that you're going to make amends with your family members rather than bearing a grudge forever. It is difficult, and it will be painful and annoying and depressing for her while she's transitioning through this. But the best thing for her to do is to interact with other non-believers who have gone through the same thing and who are going through the same thing now, and potentially reaching out to something like Recovering from Religion, where there are counselors there who can help and answer these questions, and something like the Psychotherapist Project. But it is not the fault of her becoming an atheist that she is depressed. It is not the fault of becoming an atheist any more than, hey, if you felt like I'm going to be rich, and then you find out you're not, that example that I used before of the billionaire, or maybe you really thought that somebody loved you, or that, this was going to be your soulmate, and you found out this is not my soulmate, and you find out there's no such thing as a soulmate. Now, all of a sudden, you have a better understanding of reality, so that the next relationship you enter into, you do it on the proper grounds. You do it going into it knowing what to expect. Christianity and religions have done a terrible job of teaching human beings how to deal with death. Death is an inevitable, unavoidable part of life. And if we learned and were taught how to deal with it better to begin with, we wouldn't have the fear and misery that we have about losing our loved ones. And we wouldn't have this, oh, I can't wait to see you in Fantasyland. But I want Hemant to get into, because I've said this probably 20 times.
No, I love that answer. The only thing I would add to that is it sounds like what she's upset about is change more than the atheism. And part of that is, look, when you change anything, she left religion, she's now an atheist. That is a tough transition for a lot of people, especially if you're coming from a very conservative, very fundamentalist type of Christianity. But change is always hard. The answer isn't that there's a problem with atheism. The answer is it's new. There's a lot of aspects, and letting go of all that stuff she was believing for so long, it takes a while to come to terms with that. And again, anyone who's listened to this show knows that when you're an atheist, like Matt said, there can be compelling reasons to make this life a better one. But that all of this is not going to fall into place for your girlfriend immediately. Sometimes it might be reading more books. It might be listening to more people, like Matt said, talking to other atheists, talking to the secular therapist, what have you. It takes a little bit of time to figure out how to deal with your entire world coming out from under you because you just realized they were feeding you lies. And so the depression isn't the issue. She should have someone to talk to. And my advice, and again, I'm saying this not as a therapist, is that it really will help to talk to other people who have been there, who have gone through it, who could tell you what the end of the tunnel looks like there, because that will help her come to terms with reality. But otherwise, no, what Matt said there about the problem here isn't atheism. The problem is all the lies she was fed beforehand and realizing none of that stuff was real.
Does that help, Danny?
Yeah, that helps a lot. I of course think along all those lines, and myself, I can't understand how a person way more intelligent than I could believe in such a thing. It's just beyond.
Because it's not about intelligence. So.
Yeah, but
if you're part of a really strong church culture, there are reasons that draw you in there that make you want to believe that stuff for reasons that, have nothing to do with how smart someone is. There are other reasons you are drawn into that. And when you realize it is based on these premises of lies, it takes a lot of work mentally to step away from that and realize, how do you make sense of the world if the things you've been taught in Sunday school or at home were not real? How do you make sense of that? How do you deal with all these people who you are probably very close to who believe something that you now find dishonest? I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot for anyone to deal with. And that is really hard, especially at first. And that's not even getting into relationships you have with people who belonged in that group still, and trying to step away from all that. Because for so many people, even when they have those doubts, they can't leave church because they're so tied up in that culture. So I'm not surprised it's upsetting, but it's not the fact that she is now an atheist that is the problem here.
Yeah. It's when I say it's not about intelligence, there's a quote, it may be a quote from Shermer, but I might be getting this wrong. That's, smart people are often very good at rationalizing things they came to believe for not smart reasons. And so you can be incredibly intelligent and you can be incredibly knowledgeable. And if you become convinced of something for bad reasons, and it becomes something that's cherished, it's a part of you, you can then spend forever defending it with even worse reasons, as long as you're capable of doing that kind of rationalization. So this is not a thing about IQ or smarts in any colloquial sense.
Okay.
You be there for her, you help her out as she's going through that process, and hopefully you can guide her to some resources that'll help her out too.
I have been, and I've went to the to telling her, like Nat said earlier, because I've heard him say this before about this is the only life you have to live, and if you need to make the best of it while you're here, and do the right things, so on and so forth. And I think that's helped her a little bit. I just have to bear with her, I guess, and be there for her and help her get through the process. And I really thank you guys for picking up my call, and I really appreciate your advice, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Absolutely.
You too, and that's just good relationship advice, period.
Thanks, Danny. Make sure you just give it time and be supportive, because for almost everybody, it will in fact get better over time.
Okay. Thank you very much, you guys. Have a great day, okay?
Cheers. You too, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you and I have heard that story a bazillion D1 times. I'll just make up a number.
Yeah. And we've heard it from pastors. I mean, if you're talking about going from one extreme to the other, I mean, if you're talking about going through that depression and how tough it is, maybe the people, at least from my experience, who have had to deal with the difficulty of that more than anybody are people who literally dedicated their lives to promoting those lies because they genuinely believe them. Pastors, priests who decided, I don't believe this stuff anymore. And when they leave, I mean, Julia Sweeney does this in Letting Go of God, where she talks about when she started having those doubts, it wasn't just about God. It's trying to recalibrate everything you knew, including like, well, then how are the planets up in the air?
Right.
Like, and how do you deal with that? Because there's so many things that you just attributed to God. And if you take God out of the picture, it's like, I mean, I don't know if this is the right analogy, but it's like when you become a vegetarian or something and you do that for ethical reasons, or you go vegan for ethical reasons, you start having to question every food decision, clothing decision that you're making, even things you weren't thinking about because you didn't realize it was affected. And I mean, it's one thing if you believe it very strongly and you're willing to go through that transition, the bumpy transition process. But when you're not really expecting it, which I think for a lot of people, atheism is that, where I didn't want to be it, but I think this is where the evidence goes. It's not something you volunteered and signed up to do. You're just like, wait, if this is real, then like all this other stuff has to start making sense. And you realize, you know, it's realizing my parents lied to me and it wasn't intentional, but that is what you grew up with. And this priest or pastor that you loved was lying to you and it wasn't intentional. They're not bad people, but they were wrong about this stuff. And you got to redo all of that stuff. What a difficult journey for anyone to go through. But I mean, and I'm genuinely jealous of this now because I left religion like more than 20 years ago, and there are so many amazing resources now that didn't exist when I changed. And it's kind of, if you're looking for it and you know what to look for, it can really help you with that process.
Yeah. And by the way, Hemant not only left religion, but wrote a book about how he sold his soul on eBay. Tell everybody about that real quick so they can go.
The short version is I basically visited a bunch of Christian churches saying, you know, I've never experienced this myself. I've heard about it. I mean, I live in America. I know what Christianity is like, but it's secondhand. And so I ended up visiting a whole bunch of mostly evangelical Christian churches, but different types, all black church, evangelical megachurch, house church. And a lot of them are promoting seeker services. A lot of them are specifically reaching out to atheists saying, we are doing this sermon for you to bring you into the fold. So it's like, all right, well, I'm your target audience. I will go to your church. And yeah, I sold my soul on eBay is basically what I learned going to all these churches and whether any of them were convincing. And while I'm an atheist, that's not really a spoiler. Some of the things they do to try to draw you in is, I can see why it's compelling to so many people. And until you see that and you witness it firsthand, which, at least speaking for myself, I had not experienced it firsthand, you can see how tough it could be to leave any of those places too.